Hello everybody, CritCrab here with another story, this one, once again, about the never-ending cringe machine known as Ross. If you haven't heard of Ross before, you can check out his previous antics in the description or right up in the corner, but you by no means need to see those to fully appreciate the cringe you're about to experience. Now, as the title suggests, Ross decided to write an extremely uncomfortable love story between his DM NPC and one of his players, and made the rest of the players his audience. Prepare to cringe, prepare to cry, and don't say I didn't warn you, roll post. Ross fancied himself a writer, and to his credit, in the most technical sense, he was. He wrote. A lot. Man, did he write. Unfortunately, it's the kind of writing that I genuinely believe makes the world a poorer place by having it in it, regardless of anyone actually reading it or not. Prior to the love story he inflicted onto us, I'd already gotten a pretty good idea of his talents as a writer, being his roommate, and also being too polite. At that time, I've since been cured of that affliction, to tell him how absolutely terrible his writing was, or still is. I don't know. I thankfully haven't had to read anything of his in a while, as that friendship was mercifully euthanized nearly 10 years ago. Before I actually tell you about the love story, I need to set some expectations for you. If there was any justice in this world, I would have actual examples of his talents, but I don't. Actually, there might be justice in this world, as I don't have examples. In either case, you'll just have to use your imagination a bit in order to appreciate these examples of Ross's writing capabilities. To start, Ross wrote some poetry. I say some in the sense that John Doe from Seven kept a few journals. Ross filled book upon book with his poetry. He tried to convince me once that there were different poems. I remain unconvinced still, as the poetry he inflicted upon those poor, innocent pages all followed the exact same writing scheme, rhythm, and subject matter. As the poet once said, I can hold a note forever, but eventually that's just noise. It's the change we're listening for. Okay guys, I'm speaking to you as me, CritCrab, not OP. This is the part where it gets really cringy. It's not NSFW, but you're about to hear some really bad poetry and even worse as the story goes on, and I didn't want to drop that on you without warning. After hearing this part of the story, there is no turning back, and I do not blame you if you want to turn back, click off this video, and go watch something more pleasant. I'll give you a second to pause this video and weigh your options. Okay, to those of you who are still with me, let's roll. I walk in the shadows to hear you cry, forever waiting in the dirt to lie. Can't hold on any to my hope more, shaken by love, it hurts to my core. I'm ashamed to say that as bad as that is, it's not nearly as bad as Ross's. In all honesty, it was kind of impressive what he had managed to accomplish. It was like the Room of poetry. He was the Tommy Wiseau of angsty elementary school rhyming. Imagine you're in grade 3 and you've just done a unit in English class about poetry and been assigned to write some. And that you've always wanted to hold hands with that one special person in class, but never worked up the courage to ask them. And also you are completely, absolutely convinced that you are the only person in the history of the universe who has ever felt the emotional pain for the yearning for handholding. And you fill up hundreds of pages in this newfangled art form you've received a rough description of recently, but everything you write is the verbal equivalent of when an anime schoolgirl's eyes are shaking when on the verge of tears. That is what Ross wrote for poetry. Tomes of it. An encyclopedia are you fucking with me Annika of it. One more example, because I really want to hammer this home for you. Ross, well, he was oblivious to tropes. His exposure to, life was limited, and so anytime he had an idea, it seemed to him that it was the first time someone had thought of it, for he had no frame of reference to compare it to. Which is why when he told me he was writing a fantasy novel, I could almost predict verbatim his concept. And when I say novel, I mean he had about 40 pages of handwritten bullshit that I still have not forgiven his parents for vicariously inflicting upon me. Take 2 seconds. Think about the saddest, most tired fantasy tropes as a story concept that you can possibly think of before reading ahead. Alright? Then compare what you thought and what Ross thought, and then see how close you were. I trust you, it'll be pretty spot on. Got it? Okay, it went something like this. Thousands of years ago, there was a war. I seriously fucking hate myself for even remembering this shit. And in that time, there were 4 sets of armor forged to help combat the forces of darkness. They were imbued with ancient primal powers. One had the power of air, and one had the power of earth, and one had the, seriously fucking disgusted with myself, I remember this, power of water, and one had the power of fire. But there was a 5th set of armor imbued with an even greater power than all the others. It carried the power of the greatest element. It had the power of love. But it was lost until now, when the Chosen One arose. But they didn't know they were the Chosen One. They were just a simple farmhand or whatever, who and on and on and on. Also, I'm not 100% on this, but I remember something about vampires in relation to the Huey Lewis armor. Okay, expectations set. You can now see just how talented Ross was, yes? Okay, foreplay over, now we can get right down to the RPG horror story. So, my party had just headed north while en route to the homeland of 2 players, Ross's ninja and another player's, Eric's, samurai, for reasons, and encountered a Viking-like village under attack by ice giants, and after helping defend the town, with the help of a summon fire elemental scroll, that ended up seriously biting them in the ass due to a poorly chosen command, but that is a smug story for another subreddit. They learned that a dragon tooth in the village contained the soul of an evil dragon that the giants wanted for dastardly and naughty reasons. And the only way to destroy the tooth was to take it to a portal leading to the elemental plane of fire in a far-off cave. And because they're heroes, they accept the quest. The suckers. Wahahaha. Anywho, they eventually get to the cave and they camp at the cave mouth, as they had recently been roughed up by a Remoraz and wanted to ensure they faced the challenges of the fire cave at full strength. We had ended the session there, with plans to pick up the next session when they awoke. In the ensuing 2 weeks between sessions, Ross got to work. Now, I need to pause here and clear something up. Ross was not interested in men. Ross had stuff going on, believe me, and as much as I shit on him here, there are some things I won't share with the internet as they were genuinely told to me in confidence, and I'm not that much of an asshole. But Ross was not interested in men. Ross also viewed Eric, specifically, as nothing more than a good friend. Which is why, to this day, I'm still dumbfounded as to why he wrote an epic forbidden love story between his ninja girl and Eric's samurai dude. It wasn't pornographic. Well, not in the sense of parts going into other parts, but it was emotionally pornographic in the way that Twilight is emotionally pornographic. It was the kind of tripe that a 10-year-old girl would get weak in the knees over when they had no concept of what romance actually was. Oh god. Just writing about it leaves a sour taste in the sides of my mouth. I cannot begin to impress upon you, whoever you are, dear random internet person who is reading, or listening, to this, and how freaking uncomfortable this story was. The very thought of an over 30-year-old man writing a love story between his character and a friend's character feels weird. To me, granted, maybe I'm the minority. I don't suspect I am, but I could be. To give you a brief overview of what the 15 pages he proudly thrust towards me for eagerly awaited feedback, Ninja and Samurai are on watch in the middle of a cold winter's night. Ninja starts crying. A concerned Samurai asks what's wrong. Ninja confesses in shame about her fear of returning to her homeland. unsure if she had reclaimed her honor since leaving. Samurai, oh so tenderly, opens up his fur cloak to bring her into his arms and hold her close. Finding comfort in his arms, she nuzzles against his chest, feeling safe, feeling his love. She slowly gathers her composure, reassured in her own strength by his strength, and when the samurai says he has never met anyone as strong as her, she realizes she loves him. And they gaze into each other's eyes or something and can feel the love that cannot be. For they each have obligations to the world that forbid them from the comfort of expressing their mutual love, but they have tonight, at least. And so they sit there by the fire, comforting each other for as long as they can. I'm not a particularly wise man. I don't know the answers to the big questions. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know if there's a heaven. But I know for a fact that there is a hell because I saw it in those pages. Hang on, I don't want what I'm about to type to be hyperbole. BRB a couple minutes. There, I just went and brushed my teeth to get the taste of what the actual f*** out of my mouth. I can continue. And it wasn't just that it was terribly awkward. It was just so poorly written. The prose were simple. There was no subtlety or subtext. It was all so terribly, obviously awful in every complete sense of the word. So I told him it had some interesting parts because I was just too much of a wimp to tell a friend their writing sucked and made me feel weird. When I asked him why he wrote, because I was positive no one had asked him to, he just said he had a neat idea about the conversation his ninja would have had with the samurai while camping. And they did have a conversation, to be fair, but it sure as hell was not that. And because I didn't take Ross's delusions and drown them in a tub like a sack full of unwanted kittens, he promptly showed the story to Eric. I've known Eric for almost 15 years. Not only is he one of my best friends, but he's one of the most forgiving of people. And I can say that with the full confidence of someone who tested him beyond the reasonable expectations of friendship, because he forgave me for letting him read that story. Eric, to his credit, was pretty kind. In a way, he definitely encouraged Ross to take another pass at it. And he also warned everyone else about the story well in advance. And he didn't punch me in the goddamn mouth the next time he saw me. Like I said, he's a solid dude. I don't know if Ross ever edited his story before the next session, but I do know he tried to offer it to the other players, and to their credit, they all declined. Even without Eric's warnings, I'm pretty sure the two of us physically screamed loud enough to everyone at the table to get the message across. Which is, for the best, because at least one person at the table tolerated Ross, only insofar as he didn't actively try to attack Ross. But when presented with opportunities, our cleric, Rod, didn't sugarcoat his opinions. And if Ross had broken down into tears from some honest feedback, which I trust he would have, I sure as hell was not going to hold him to my chest throughout the night in order to comfort him. And still, this was not the worst of Ross. He continued to find new and amazing ways to exasperate everyone. TLDR, Sad Sack writes a love story between his character and another player's character. The story contains confessions and fears and forbidden desires and all the crap that makes you shift awkwardly in your seat and question your life decisions to bring you to that moment. End post. Dear viewer, I had my reservations about Ross. I thought he might be a little weird or misunderstood, but now it's really personal. This is easily one of the most painfully cringy stories I've read in a long time. It might even give the anime Catwoman a run for her money. But reading this has been the verbal equivalent of taking a bottle opener to my fingernails. And the worst part is, there's more. If you cringed, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more brain damage. Till next time.